All right, hi guys. I read chapter 5, which was entitled Key Elements of a Curriculum for Intermediate ELLs. The quote I really liked that this chapter started out with was, quote, "It is easy to feel overwhelmed by what our students don't know. However, every student comes to the classroom with a wealth of experiences and knowledge." Page 124. I think this is a really great thing to keep in mind, especially as ESLs. Our students may not know everything. They may not be able to communicate with us how they're feeling, what they want, what they know, what they don't know. But they do have skills, they do have strengths, but they have their weaknesses too. Our job is to improve their weaknesses by drawing on their strengths, by doing things that motivate them, encourage them, help them relate to the content and experience the English language. By doing these things, we will draw out their strengths and improve their weaknesses. So this chapter focused on reading and writing and listening and speaking. Basically, it went through different types of things that we can do with our students to improve their reading and writing that can be a part of our curriculum. I'm going to start with reading and writing. So our first activity that we talked about was free voluntary reading, extensive reading, or recreational reading. Basically, this is letting students choose what they're going to read, giving them time to do this, and kind of throwing in a couple activities here and there that incorporate the readings they choose. One reason this is really important is that it builds student interest and their literacy at the same time. Students aren't really going to want to sit down and read a huge document that talks about the history of education or something like that. That's not what students are interested in. They're going to be interested in their spy novels, or I always loved Nancy Drew, or different things like that. By allowing them to choose their pieces of literature, they're going to be more interested and more motivated to do this. So we can kind of make this a little more molded to the actual school setting by setting goals to add structure to this enjoyment. So this will actually push the students to improve and not just get comfortable with reading the books they like. Another thing we can do is add reading logs, which can be used for assessment. The book kind of stressed that you shouldn't do this too much, only 1 to 2 times a week, or else it's going to become monotonous. And in these reading logs, you can have students predict what's going to happen in their book, ask questions, make connections, visualize what might be happening, maybe draw a picture, summarize what their book is talking about, and evaluate. Some other ideas that come into reading are book talk and book trailers. So this is kind of incorporating some technology, going on to the internet and finding a trailer for your book that maybe was made into a movie, and kind of talking about how this was different or similar to the book, how you thought it would be portrayed, different things like this. Recreational reading has a lot of benefits. It increases children's knowledge, allows children to practice and improve their reading skills, stimulates their imagination, leads to higher achievement skills, promotes positive attitudes towards reading, and allows those who participate in this activity to become more accelerated readers. Okay, so in order to read, we know there needs to be a good vocabulary background. So we need to be able to build vocabulary while also giving students the chance to read. One good way to do this is with word charts and word walls. So basically, these are charts throughout your room that have very important words that are used maybe in your specific unit or used overall. So overall words could be words like this, a, is, there, and words in a certain unit. I know in one of my clinicals they were doing a unit on Vietnam, and the teacher had words like soldier, war, guerrilla warfare, things like that up on the board. An idea to add to these word walls is adding a movement to each main vocab word. So you should allow students to collaborate, kind of define these words, add movements, and add pictures to the word themselves. By doing this, you'll be providing a lot of different ways for learners to remember these vocab words, whether it's by the definition, the movements, or the pictures. So a fact that I found in this reading was that 75% of learners are better when movement is involved. This immediately made me think of Gardner's multiple intelligences. I'm sure most, if not all of you, have heard of this before, as education usually talks about multiple intelligences a lot. But in case you haven't, multiple intelligences is the idea that there are many different strengths and ways that people learn. So there's verbal and linguistic, logical, mathematical, naturalist, bodily, kinesthetic, musical, rhythmic, interpersonal, intrapersonal, and visual and spatial. So a learner can have a combination of these, heavily weigh towards one, not be so good at another. Overall, though, particular students will learn best in different ways. By providing a vocab word wall with definitions, movements, and pictures, you're going to be hitting all of these different intelligences and allowing most students to learn in your classroom. You might not reach all of them, but our goal is to try our best to do so. Some other ideas for vocabulary are going online to look up vocabulary words and doing read alouds, think alouds, or closes. So an example of a close you can see right here is basically you're just taking a word out of a sentence and the students have to kind of figure out what word goes there. So you could provide a word bank, you could not. So for an example, here's one. It says the banana has a space. So obviously the word we're going to put here is yellow. This just helps the student kind of make sense of what word should go where and helps them to become more visually aware of what they're reading. An activity and discussion for you guys, if you have time, is to go to the following website, and that will take you to the Multiple Intelligences Assessment Quiz. So it only takes about 2 minutes. You take the quiz, and it tells you what your strengths and weaknesses are in the multiple intelligences. So after you take it, discuss how these strengths and weaknesses affect how you learn and teach. How can you ensure that students with all intelligences will be able to succeed in your classroom? All right, so we're moving on to writing. So writing is really interesting to me because there were a lot of great ideas. The first idea was to test data sets. So the teacher can put together a group of writings. They can all be maybe from the same book or from different books with the same theme, something like that. And it is the students' job to read these writings and seek out patterns that connect to a larger meaning. This can kind of be tied into most English classes in high school especially, because the big thing is finding symbolism, metaphors, different ideas behind readings. This can kind of just break it down a little bit for your ELLs, maybe not give them a whole book, but just different clips of writing. And this can help improve their decoding and comprehension skills. Mimic writing. So mimic writing does not mean you're giving the students a piece of writing and they're just looking at it and copying it word for word. No, mimic writing means that students will read it and kind of try to mimic the style of the writing, not exactly what the writing is saying. So for example, provide the students with a piece of writing that has a lot of imagery, and then give the students a new topic and tell them to try and mimic this type of writing with the imagery. This can help students develop different type of writing skills, but also give them something to base their writing off of so they don't feel totally lost. Okay, and then this last one is actually my favorite, images. This idea is to give students a picture and tell them to write, describe, provide questions, or provide a story for what they see. So I just went onto Google and found a couple ideas that you can see on the right, which I think are just really cool. So the first one says, imagine a world where sharks swim in the forest and somehow you find yourself lost in the woods. So this one's kind of a scary one, a mystery one, just totally bizarre, right? Like it has really no connection to the real world, but this is what's so great about it, is that students will be able to expand their creativity, their imagination, and it's kind of fun for them. They don't always have to be thinking about real world things. The one on the bottom right says, tell the story of Halloween from a perspective of a piece of candy. This allows students to kind of walk in somebody else's shoes, even if that is candy. but it helps them to see the world from a different perspective. And the one at the left says, this is the end of the story. Can you write the beginning? So this, again, just draws on their creativity, but allows them to look at story and narrative in a different way. Not always from the beginning to the end, but maybe going from the end back to the beginning. And lastly, we get to listening and speaking. So listening and speaking, there are a couple different ideas for this. First one is video clips and questions. So this is just watching a short video and answering or generating questions. So I have an example of this to the right. There are a bunch of videos out there that you can just go click on, and they show you a quick video. They're made for ELLs, and you can develop activities to go with these videos. So I'll show you the beginning of this one, and you can finish watching it in class if you have time.
Smaller bites, Dash. Yikes. Bob, could you help the carnivore cut his meat? Ow. Dash, you have something you want to tell your father about school?
Well, we dissected a frog.
Dash got sent to the office again.
Good.
No, Bob, that's bad.
What?
Dash got sent to the office again.
What? What for?
Nothing.
All right, so you guys can see that this is from The Incredibles. What I really like about this video is that it kind of lays out the order of what's going to happen. First, the students will watch the original clip, then watch it with subtitles, then we'll point out some keywords, and we'll replay the original clip again. So this is interesting for students, right? They're watching a movie in school. That's always fun. But they're also listening. They're going to be able to read with the subtitles. They're going to learn new vocab with the keywords. And they're going to be able to, again, watch the video and see how these new things tie in. You could also throw in an activity where they have to discuss what they saw, and that will tie in their speaking. Another idea is dialogue. So the teacher or the student writes a dialogue, and students act out what the dialogue says. This just gives them the chance to kind of practice their speaking and listening to others, but they're not too lost. They don't have to feel too anxious because they have the words right there for them. 3, 2, 1, students pick a topic and talk about it for about 3 minutes, 2 minutes, and then 1 minute. This is just kind of practicing their skills of drawing out a conversation or talking about something quickly. And then speed dating, just like you would expect, speed dating, all the students line up in a long line in front of each other, and for a timed amount, they will talk to the person in front of them, and then the timer will go off, and they'll rotate and talk to the next person about a topic that was decided before the activity began. So all of these activities are really great to practice their listening, speaking. Some of them are more supported, like the dialogues. There's something for them to read from. Other ones, like speed dating, are going to be a little more difficult because they have to think on the spot. Okay, so here is my reference page. Overall, I think these are some awesome ideas for reading, writing, speaking, and listening. What is great about all these ideas is that they're fun. They're not just sitting there reading through basic school books or working on boring grammar worksheets, things like that. These all are creative. Some of them tie into real life. Some of them tie into the imagination. They are individualized. Students are allowed to pick their own topics, especially for the free reading where they can pick their own book. So overall, I think these activities will really motivate ELL